Flower language, or florography, inspired by traditions created during the Japanese Heian period, was a fashionable trend that became especially popular much later in the Victorian era. This tradition became one of the few ways women could express themselves. For centuries, in many countries in Europe and Asia, the symbolic language of flowers has been acknowledged. In William Shakespeare's work, like Hamlet, they also play a large role. The ancient Greek, Roman, Egyptian, and Chinese mythologies, sonnets, and plays are peppered with flower and plant symbolism, and for good reason. Almost every conceivable feeling can be conveyed with flowers.
Japan is a spiritual, fruitful, earth-loving nation infused with Buddhist customs, so naturally, Japan was first to take flower language to its highest point during the Heian period by adapting it into their own culture, creating the secret language of Hana-kotoba, or the language of flowers. In the Heian period, the symbolism of flowers appeared in Noa, a traditional Japanese mass drama with dance and song, poetry, and even the world's first novel ever created. The symbolism created through this secret language can be seen even nowadays with Sakura cherry blossoms, which have become a staple Japanese flower and are frequently viewed and admired in America.
Although florography became more popular in Europe, they were inspired by the women of the Ottoman Empire, who used flowers to convey messages that they could not say aloud. It all started with Lady Mary Wortley Montagu, a poet who married a British ambassador to Turkey. During her time there, Montagu used flower language as a way of communication to alter salam, better described as a game in which women could send messages to another with special objects and understand the object using rhymes. Lady Montagu decided to change salam by understanding it as a complicated symbolic language and not a game, and shifted the definition of it.
As Montagu once wrote, quote, "There is no color, no flower, no weed, no fruit, herb, pebble, or feather that has not a verse belonging to it, and you may quarrel, reproach, or send letters of passion, friendship, or civility, or even of news, without ever inking your fingers." Montagu allowed harem women to evidently start using salam to sneak letters to their lovers. Although salam seemed great, many women began to see it as an outlet for artistry and self-expression, but one that would be forgotten over time as it lay within strict bounds of proper. The uses of flower language seemed to be an acceptable hobby at the time, but could never be used for career-building, money-making pastimes.
France began utilizing flower language when Greek and Armenian women helped Hammer Purcell understand the language of flowers and translate traditional Turkish phrases into French. Many books of flowers have been created, but one of the first major texts published was a French volume in 1819 called Le Language des Fleurs, which was soon translated to English and spread florography out onto both sides of the Atlantic. Flower language became very relevant and popular in the U.S. from 1827 to 1923 through art and literature, and more books were made there. It made sense that flower symbolism was at its height in this time because of the Neo-Romanticism.
The language of flowers became more vast over time and now includes over 100 different types and species of flowers. Every country and time period held special connections to many different flowers. Because of the difference in time and language, a lot of flowers have multiple meanings. This is seen in the flower iris, representing many things like wisdom, power, valor, hope, renewal, royalty, and more. In ancient Greece, in the hope that the goddess Iris would lead them on her rainbow to the afterworld, people would place irises on their loved ones' graves. In ancient Egypt, the iris identified as faith, fortitude, and wisdom. The iris has also been used with kings and knights during the medieval period as a symbol of bravery and power.
The many meanings of flowers had caused miscommunication and misunderstandings as the language became more complex. The use of smooth communication using flowers became somewhat possible when publishers in the 19th century were inspired by Lady Mary Wortley Montagu and began publishing dictionaries with the flowers and their many meanings. But even still, many of the dictionaries mirrored one another, so some meanings of the flowers appeared relatively consistent, but dissonances still existed. This began the further expansion of how flower language could be used. In a time of the idea of lovers speaking fondly and showing affection openly being inappropriate, flowers became a way for two people in love to communicate.
The expansion of florography due to the release of flower language dictionaries began to take arts and literature by storm in America. It was a necessity to the spiritual and symbolic works of the 19th century group of artists called the Pre-Raphaelite Brotherhood, who used flowers in their art to add special meanings to their paintings. The unspoken language began to be weaved into poems like the works of Christopher Smart and written about in many books like the writings of Elizabeth Wirt, Sarah Hale, Frances Osgood, Catherine H. Esling, and many more. These books, magazines, newspapers, and more created a new era that has since then been greatly forgotten in America. Novelists such as Jane Austen and Emily Bront would use flower language in their works. Pride and Prejudice, Northanger Abbey, and Wuthering Heights, to name a few. Plays and paintings use flower symbolism as a way to hide secret meanings in their pieces, like John Everett Millais, who painted a picture of Hamlet's lover, Ophelia, floating in a stream of willows, meaning morning, violets, meaning faithfulness, and poppies, meaning sleep. A modern audience would see this as just a girl floating in water, but the Victorians saw the true meaning hidden behind the paint.
Some of the most meaningful flowers can be found in even your front yard, such as daisies. Daisies symbolize innocence and purity and are often given to new mothers to congratulate them, as they also symbolize motherhood, childbirth, and new beginnings. The daisy is Freya's sacred flower in Norse mythology. Thanks to the Roman myth of Vertimus and Boletes, they also signify chastity and transformation. Some flowers have become so intricate that they could mean the exact opposite of something when flipped over, and the daisy applies to that. The daisy is a composite flower, also known as two flowers combined into one, and symbolize true love.
Another elegant flower that can be used to communicate many feelings is the belladonna, also known as the deadly nightshade. The belladonna is said to be the property of the devil and is known to be deadly to anyone who consumes his fruit. In art, the deadly nightshade represents anger, betrayal, danger, deception, and death, while the quite contrary meaning of the belladonna is beautiful women. This plant is so complex that it is written about in a journal article by Elizabeth A. Campbell called Don't Say It with the Nightshades, Sentimental Botany and the Natural History of Atropa belladonna, containing the original works of Victorian writers and culturalists, as well as showing the versatility of the deadly nightshade.
The wide variety of meaning and definitions of flowers allows multiple flowers to convey feelings, motives, and emotions when placed together as bouquets. Taking indicators from the romantic and quiet vocabulary of the Turkish Empire, talking bouquets rose to prominence. A bouquet of red roses, signifying love, represents something completely different than a bouquet of white roses, symbolizing sympathy. Even herbs were made into small bouquets and given as tokens of appreciation, love, honor, and so on. Understanding the secret language ensures that the gift of a bouquet is a true representation of your heartfelt intentions.
We still use flowers to communicate feelings and messages even now. There are no rules for what each flower is meant to mean, but it is the feeling and thought that creates expression that represents each and every flower. Certain flowers or colors can trigger a memory, whether happy or sad, and flowers can be a way to congratulate or commemorate something wonderful. The language of flowers has evolved since the beginning of its creation and was a way to communicate emotion through giving bouquets, creating art, and through even literature. There still is controversy to this day about where florography was used and when, but even now it should be known that although words can fail, the old-fashioned way of communication known as flower language can always be relied on when expressing emotions.